What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the next part in the Spotify app series. In the last part, we put together the app icon, did some cleanup, the launch image. And in this part, we're going to start taking a look at actually populating some browse data on the first tab here. If we head on over to the API reference, you'll see that under the heading for the browse API, there's quite a few endpoints to get things like new releases, recommended genres, recommended music, categories, etc. So we're going to be implementing the API calls in this video, since there's quite a few. And in the next few videos, we're going to be implementing the UI, the album artwork, all that good stuff to get a really nice, beautiful UI. So that all said, get started by destroying the like button. Let's go ahead and open up Xcode and dive back into our project. So we are going to first and foremost, let's go ahead and hit Command B, make sure everything is compiling and Xcode's not going to give us weird issues. But we are going to jump into our API caller right there. And we are going to write out a new API call that we want. So the first one we're going to work with is getting new releases. So we'll click it and we'll see here is the endpoints for this particular API. And you'll see we will copy everything after the v1, so /browse and new releases. It's a get call. It wants the authorization header as well as 3 optional query parameters. We're just going to add limits so we can get 50 results instead of 20. So let's go ahead and write this. So I'm going to add a new public function here. And I'm going to go ahead and call it get new releases. It's going to have a completion parameter, which is going to be an escaping closure. It's going to return as the parameter a result. Now we want a model for the whatever we're going to return, but since we don't have it, I'm just going to call it a string for now. And if it fails, we're going to return an error. So first things first, we want to create a request. Let's go ahead and do that. This takes in a URL with a string of constants.base API URL. Let's go ahead and tack on the suffix there. And we also want a limit parameter for 50. The type was a get call, and the completion gives us a request in here. So we're going to say request in. I'm going to go ahead and create a task now. So we're going to say let task is a URL session shared. And we want a data task with a request and a completion. So we want this guy down here. So request, pass that in, and completion will give us back data, a HTTP response, which we don't care about. So we'll say underscore for discardable. Now in here, we just want to convert the data to our actual JSON. So let's unwrap it first. Make sure our error is indeed nil. Don't forget to say task.resume down here. That's how you actually kick off the session task. And then in a do catch block, we can go ahead and try to convert this to JSON. So I'm going to say JSON. We're first going to convert it to just raw JSON object before we add something that's codable, a model, just to make sure that we can go ahead and print it and that the API call is successful. So I'm going to say print JSON. And in the catch case, we're just going to say some failure occurred, and we're going to bubble up the error. I'm also going to say in this else block, some failure occurred, and this is an API error. And we only added one, which is failed to get data. If you recall, that's our own custom error that we added right up here. You could add your own case if you want, but we're just going to be lazy and stick with that. And now all we need to do is actually call this API from a view controller. So we're going to call it from home view controller. The one thing I tweaked in here is I just called this browse, the title, and I line broke this so it's a little cleaner to read. But let's go ahead and say fetch data at the bottom of view to load. We're going to create a new function and we're going to call it fetch data. The reason I'm calling it fetch data, which is a little ambiguous, is because we're going to make multiple API calls once we actually get there. So we're calling it data. So we're going to say get new releases. This returns to us a result. We're going to want to switch on said result and get the model out of success. And if it fails, we'll have an error. And in both cases, we're just going to break in this video since we're not implementing UI. Go ahead and hit Command R to build and run. And I think we have an error somewhere. Looks like we have an error. Let's see what screwed up. Let me go ahead and click on this. And we need to put try before this conversion to JSON since this call can throw. Let's go ahead and give it a run, and we should see a ton of JSON down here, which in fact we do. Looking pretty good, and it looks like we have literally a ton of data. So let me make our lives a little simpler. So instead of getting 50 results back, let me go ahead and limit this to 1. So we have less data to look at because we're going to need to convert this object into something sensible. So looks like this gives us a key of albums. And there's a limit in here. There's a next, offset, previous, and total. So let's go ahead and we're just going to care about these albums. And this is, I believe, it looks to be an array of, it actually looks to be a key rather of album or albums, and it's pointing to an album object. And this whole thing looks to be an array. So let me go ahead and change this to a limit of 2. Basically, what we're trying to do is figure out what the JSON structure looks like so we can create a, an appropriate model that represents it. So let me just copy this whole thing. And we're going to jump into our models folder. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. And this one's going to be called new releases response, new releases response, just like that. I'm going to paste in the response here. Let's take a look at it. So first of all, this huge thing is just a long list of available markets, and it looks to be an array. So I'm just going to trim it so it's not obnoxiously long, since we kind of get the point there. And we should probably have another one of those. Let me trim this one too so it's a little more legible. All right, looking pretty good. So let's see what we've actually gotten here. It's not too much data actually. So our root thing is JSON, and it's pointing to, it has an albums in here, and albums looks to have items. All right, so there's items. All right, looks good. Limit is 2, and then items is an array of new release items, it looks like. Okay, so that makes sense. So we're going to go ahead and create this here. Disregard all the errors that this is giving because we just dumped in a bunch of JSON. But we're going to create a new releases response. We're going to make sure we don't forget to add codable. And the root key that we care about is albums. And this is a albums object. So we're going to go ahead and let's see, how do we want to do this? We can say this is a albums response. Be careful with your naming so it's somewhat sensible. It's not like right or wrong, but as you add more objects, you just want to make sure you understand what you wrote. And everyone knows, I mean, I'm guilty of it too. So just be mindful of it. So we don't care about this href in here. All I really care about is items. So I'm going to say items is a array of album objects. So I'm going to go ahead and put an album down here, which is once again going to be codable. And now album, which is each of these guys, is going to have a variety of pieces of information on it. So I'm going to pull that out. We can get rid of the next one here since they're basically the same. And let's see, we don't really care about the rest of this stuff either. So let's go ahead and delete this. And this basically represents a single album. I'm going to hit Control-I to just tab everything over so we can read what the keys are. So first up, we have album type, which I guess we care about. Let me just copy and paste it. So we'll say this is album type. Looks like it's a string. Next up, it has an array of artists. So let's skip that for now. Then it has available markets, which is a array of strings, it looks like. All right, so we have available markets. Let me start deleting these as we go along. Otherwise, it's going to become a nightmare. Then we have external URLs. I really don't care about that. href, we don't care about that either. ID is probably important so we can get further information about the given album. So we want to hang on to that. Images is important too. So we have, we already have an image, but this one we have a height and width, right? We created an image model. I think we put it under user profile. So let me go ahead and let's go ahead and take this and just put it into its own file because we're going to now be using it for other models. We don't want to redundantly create the same model. And this is why I was saying be careful with naming because it looks like we called a user image, which might be slightly misleading now. So let me actually go ahead and change this to API image. And let's go back to our user profile and change this to be an API image. And we're ignoring the height and width. So now what we can do is if we come back to our new releases, let me actually change the file name here also to be API image, because user image is just confusing. So we have an array of images. Where did they go? Right here. And we're going to say each one is the API image. So I want to copy that, drop that right there. We're going to get rid of my window here that pops up. And this is an array of API image. Looking good, looking good. Let's go ahead and get rid of this API or images key. There's also a name, which is obviously important. That's the name of the album. I guess it's a new release. There is a release date, I guess. That's what we'll also grab since it's kind of important. It's a string. There is a number of tracks I just saw, total tracks, which is an integer. All right. And we know it's an album already, and we really don't care about the URL. And release date precision, I really don't care about that either. So we're gonna get rid of that. And the next thing we have is artists. So we're gonna want an array of artist objects. So we're gonna say here, let artists, and this is going to be a artist. And I think we have a file for this already. And actually we had a file for, yeah, we have a file for artist already. So let's actually put it there. We might want to create a separate file for album up here as well, but in artist, let me just create it here to be quick, and then we can always move it into a separate file. All right, so there's our artist. Each of these artists has there's an external URL, which I kind of don't care about. What I care about is the ID name. Well, actually, let me go back to that. So we care about, I guess we care about this external URL. There's an ID name type. Let's go and add those first. So I'm going to first say ID. There is a name on it. Of course there is, that makes sense. There is a type on it. And let's see, we got these three. We don't care about this URL. We don't care about this href. We might care about external URLs only because you can open this, I guess, in a web view in your app. So it might be useful to have. So I'm going to say this is a dictionary where the key is a string and the value is also a string, just like that. And finally, let's get rid of this whole thing. And we should be in business. Let me move this artist into its own file since we already created one. We have artist.swift here. Paste that on in. Go ahead and hit Command B. You shouldn't have any build errors. Hopefully you don't, looking good. And instead of converting to JSON now back in our API caller, let's go ahead and convert this to the new releases response. So we're gonna say JSON decoder, and we're going to decode our data, rather we're gonna decode the new releases response.self from the data. And if we're able to do this, we'll print it out, I guess. Let's go ahead and call it result instead of JSON. But we're going to say completion, success, and pass back the results. Don't forget to change this string type to be the new releases model we just created. Then this error will go away. Go ahead and give it a run once more, and let's make sure we're not hitting any errors. If we do, we'll debug them together. All right, looking good. So no errors. We see our object being dumped here. It's a new release response. And yeah, so we can get rid of the print statement. And also don't forget to get rid of the limit here. You set it to 2. Well, I set it to 2. We're going to make that 50 again. All right. So there is that API call. Let's add a couple more. So let's come back here. And let's go back up to the top here. Let's ask, rather, let's see what else is available. So let's see, where did it go? Just saw browse somewhere. All right, here we go, browse API. We just did new releases. So there's get all featured playlists. So this, I guess, gives us albums, and this one will give us playlists. So let's take a look at this one. All right, it's another get request. That's going to be browse/featured playlists. Looking good. Let's come back here. Let's add in one more API call. This is going to be public func get featured playlists. Once again, we're going to say completion. It's going to be an escape enclosure. It's going to take a result as a parameter. We're going to put a string there since we haven't created the model for the response yet. And this whole thing will return void just like that. And let's see. So once again, we're going to want to create a request. Should be pretty redundant at this point. And one thing you'll notice is You know, a lot of these code snippets that we're adding is like the same thing over and over, but just adapted for like the new API call. So here is a featured playlist. Let's see if it takes any parameters. So let's see, it takes a country, which is optional, a locale, which is also optional, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see, limit. So limit initially gives us 20, but we can go to 50. So we will bump that. So similar to what we did for albums, but let's say limit 2, just like we did before, so we can, actually see it properly and create some sensible model out of it. Now this is going to give us a request in the completion handler. So we're going to say request in. I'm going to go ahead and line break this because it's getting a little long. Let's see, we also want to line break this. Let's do that. We can line break that. And now we can just perform the call. So actually what I'll do is you could probably even create a reusable function for all the session task stuff, but I'm just going to copy and paste it for the sake of being quicker about this. We basically create a task with this request. And instead of decoding into this type, we're going to decode it into JSON first so we can print out the results. So we can actually see what we get. So we're going to say JSON serialization, JSON object with the data, allowing fragments. And last thing, to actually continue here, instead of calling get new releases, we're going to say get featured releases. Yay. And completion here, we're going to say, let's just ignore it for now, since we're not really doing anything with it. Go ahead and give this a run, and we should see a bunch of JSON in here. All right, boom, looking good, looking good. Let's see what this looks like. So we have a message, apparently. Looks like this is a selection from the editor. And then there's a list of playlists, which is an array of what I would presume to be playlist objects. So let's see what's in here. So it gives us a bunch of information about this. Let me take this whole thing and we're going to create some models out of this. I'm going to right click models, new file, and it's going to be a Swift file. We're going to call this featured playlist response. All right, go ahead and throw that in there. I'm going to paste in the response. And it looks like the root here has a playlist, which is an array of playlist objects. So we're going to call this featured playlists response, which is codable, looking good. And it has a playlist, which is an array of playlist objects. We totally did not spell that right. Playlist. And I know we have a playlist file, but we'll add it in there after we've defined it here. So playlists is actually, it looks like playlists is not an array. Playlist is actually an object with an array of items inside of it. Tricky, interesting. So we're going to call this playlist response. I'll put that there. Now, playlist response has items, which is an array of playlists. So just be careful when you're converting to stuff. It's pretty easy to just read it incorrectly. Maybe it's just me, and I don't know how to read, but yeah, just be careful with it because it'll definitely bite you in the butt at some point. So I'm going to copy one of those out. Looks very similar to the album response. So here's a representation of one playlist. Let's go ahead and add all this jazz into our model here. So let's see, collaborative, I don't even know what that means. We have a description, that's kind of cool. We care about that. We're gonna grab the description off of this. Let's see, external URLs, sure, why not? We're gonna grab this as well, in case we wanna open it in a, web view or even share that URL. It's a dictionary of string and string. Hopefully y'all are starting to see a pattern with this of, it's most of their APIs are pretty similar, which is by design. So people have an easy time, implementing stuff. Images is once again going to be our API image, which is why we renamed it. So it's more appropriate for reusability. It has a name. All right, there is our name, looking good. We can get rid of these. Also has an owner, presumably the person who created the playlist. It has a primary color, don't really care about that. If it's public, I'm not sure what a snapshot ID is. I would assume this is the playlist at a given points in time because a user can modify a playlist. So I assume this is a snapshot of the playlist for a given timestamp. So I don't really care about that either, but perhaps we could, we don't really care about tracks either. So let's get rid of this. We know it's a playlist because we're literally getting featured playlists, but we probably want to get the owner. So for the owner, this looks to be a user. So there's an ID here. There's a type. Yep, it's a user. And we already have a user profile. So let me see what we put in user profile if we can reuse it. So we have a country, display name, email. I guess we can't reuse that because this is much simpler. So I'm just going to say user. We'll create it down below. All right, so now this is going to have a display name, string, and I guess we can have that external URLs as well. Seems like a theme across most of their API calls. Href, don't really care about that. ID we probably want. So let me add the ID here. Bear with me. All right, so we don't care about the type or that user thing, so or the URL thing. So go ahead and hit Command B, make sure your project is compiling, which it indeed is. And let's go back to our API caller and swap out the decoding code here. I'm just gonna go ahead and delete that because I commented it out. Change your model, right? We want to decode to that featured playlist response from the data. We're printing the data. We also probably want to call the completion handler with success for results. Let me go ahead and change this to be results. And don't forget to change the results type here as well from string to the new type that we added. Go ahead and give it a run. And we should see our model printed in here like that. Beautiful. I'm surprised we haven't hit more errors and I haven't made a typo, but maybe that's because I'm doing this for YouTube right now and YouTube likes me. So let's go ahead and pause this and we're gonna add, I think just one more. We're almost at the end of this video. So let's go back to the top. We're gonna go to the browse API heading again. And I hate this color that they picked. I can like barely read it, but we did these first two. I'm not gonna do categories here because we're gonna use that in search. But we probably wanna do recommended and recommended genres. So let's see what recommended returns. So let's read the description here. Recommendations are generated based on available information, blah, blah, blah. Not going to read it. So it looks like it's recommending tracks, and tracks gives you an array of artists. Let's see, there's external URLs, it gives you IDs, etc., etc. So interesting. We can do this one. Let's see what the other recommended one was, because there was another one here too. This one is recommended genres. So I kind of just want to do this one because genres, maybe we'll do that one later on, but let's go ahead and add this too. So we're just going to say /recommendations and we'll see what we get out of this API call. So let's go ahead and give this a pause, which we already did. Close that bottom panel. And we're going to add one more new API. This is going to be public func get recommendations. Hopefully I spelled that right. It's going to have a completion handler, which will be an escaping block, same as before, returns void. It's going to have a result. We're going to stick a string in there for now. We'll have an error. Let's go ahead and create a request. We'll say create request. This is a URL. This is going to be constants plus base. That is not what we want. Constants dot base URL plus the path. I'm gonna line break this. Next one is a get, since it's a get request. And then we'll get the actual request out of this function. Let me go ahead and line break all this jazz so we have some more better structured code. And now we are going to copy and paste because that's what developers do. We're gonna go ahead and copy that right there. And instead of decoding to this model here, we need to just print out the JSON first. So I'm going to say a result is JSON serialization, JSON object, data, allowing fragments. If you're not familiar with what fragments are, it's kind of really irrelevant, so don't worry about that. But let's go ahead and then just call this from the home view controller. Let's come back here again. And instead of this, we're going to say get recommendations. And I'm pretty curious to see what this is going to recommend because this is a brand new account that I created. So I'm not sure if they're going to even return anything. We'll see. We'll see. It'll be interesting. Let's go ahead and give this a run. It looks like we have an error somewhere. Let me come back here and see what I screwed up. We forget try. We always forget to add the keyword try. Let's try that one more time. And interesting, we don't get anything. Why didn't we get anything? Spotify, we got no results. So let me say JSON and put the result in there like that. We're getting recommendations. Perhaps we're not even getting down there, so because there's no recommendations. Let me make sure I typed everything right. Recommendations. It is a get request. We're saying get recommendations. And let's print out in here starting recommendations API call. We might just not have any recommendations because it's a freshly created account. So actually that's not right because it's not even coming in here. So that's something's botched. So let's go back to our home view controller. And let's see what I screwed up here. We're saying get current user, duh. We need to say get recommendations. All right, underscore. Let's get rid of that code completion block. Let's try that one more time. And okay, interesting. So we're now seeing invalid request. Why is it invalid? Let's see why it's invalid. Probably because I didn't read the parameters it wants. So we're definitely calling it here, which is good. I can get rid of that print statement. Our request, we are creating as base URL and recommendations. We're saying it's a get. Let's take a look here. All right, it's a get recommendations. And what does it take? It takes authorization. It takes a limit, which is optional. Another optional. Oh, there's another required one. So this one is seed artists, a comma separated list of Spotify IDs for seed artists. Up to 5 seed values may be provided in any combination of seed artists, seed tracks, and seed genres. Interesting. So we don't have any actual seed artists, which is interesting. So let's actually do well, I'm gonna leave that API call there. And let's just comment it out. So let's do get recommended genres because we could probably seed. I guess seeding is like based on what seeds we give it, it'll give us related recommendations. So let's see what recommended genres is asking of us. So with this API call, it looks like it only asks for a authorization. So we can probably get away with this, and this gives us an array of genres. So let's go ahead and do this one instead. So this is recommendations / available genre seeds. Okay, makes sense. Learning together. Let's go ahead and copy this. And I'm gonna create it right down here. Public func get recommended genres. This will have a completion, escaping. We want a result in here. String for now. If it fails, we're gonna yell with an error. We're gonna say void for the return type. We're gonna create a request URL with a string of constants, the base URL, paste on in that suffix there. And let's go ahead and line break since it's already kind of long. All right, that'll be a trailing closure. Let's go ahead and line break all this stuff. This one's going to be request. And we want to now actually execute this request. So what are we going to do? We are going to copy and paste. So I'm going to grab this whole thing and drop it on in. Command / to bulk comment out and uncomment out. And let's see, I think we should be in business with this code at least. Now we want to go back to our home view controller and just change the call sites. So we're going to say get recommended, what the heck did I call it? Get recommended genres. Let's go ahead and comment this and just say Command B so autocomplete gets its life together. So we're going to say API caller shared get recommended genres. Huh, did I type it wrong? Let me go back. API caller, we said get recommended genres. So it looks right to me. So we are going to say shared get recommended genres, and we don't care about the results since we're just printing it out. Let's go ahead and give this a run, and this one should succeed. We should see a nice list of genres, which we do. So cool. So let's create a response object for this. So here is the root. it simply has one key called genres, which is an array of strings. So what we will do is we're going to go into models. I'm going to say new model. We're going to create a Swift file, and we are going to say recommended genres response. Kind of verbose, but I prefer to have longer names rather than vague names. Recommended genres response. That is not how you spell genres. This video has also gotten super long, so I might cut it in like a moment here, but this has a genres in here, which is an array of strings. Looking great. Let me make sure nothing else is in here. Yep, they're just strings. All right, so we can now go back to our API caller, and in this function, we can uncomment this, and we can uncomment that, and we're going to try to get our recommended genres out of this. And we're also going to change the type in the completion results there. And we're also going to print out said result to make sure that we are successfully decoding our JSON to our model. Go ahead and hit Command R, and we should see our model here. Beautiful. And now what we could actually do, and I don't know if this is going to actually work, we can use these as seeds to for our other APIs. And let me just check if we can use those actual genres or if we need to get the ID out for each of those genre types. I suspect we probably won't need the ID, but let me see. So what are we doing here? So this is saying we can supply, where is that seed? So there is seed tracks, we don't care. There's target acousticness, kind of cool actually, not gonna lie. Where is seed genres? So there's limits, market, seed artists, seed genres. Okay, so what do we want? We want a separate list of genres of the set available genre seed. Up to 5 seed values may be provided in any combination of these. Okay, so it's comma separated and it's a string. And it looks like it's a query parameter. So I think we can actually get away with this. So it's saying seed genres. So let me go ahead and uncomment this. And what we are going to say here is get recommendations. We're going to pass in genres, which will be an array of strings, or I guess it could be a more appropriately a set of strings, which are our genres. And what we will do is we are going to combine those and append them here. So recommendations, and the parameter is seed genres. And I'm going to go ahead and say this will be we'll call this seeds rather. All right. And seeds, basically, we want to combine all of these genres, each string in here, into a single string. So we're going to say seeds is genres, and we can, I think, join all of these with a separator of comma, just like that, and that should be sufficient. But now what we want to do is from this massive list of genres that we get back, we want to go ahead and get 5 random elements. So how do we do that? We're going to do it in the home view controller. So once we get the result in here, what I'm going to say now is result in. All right, we are going to switch on this guy. We're going to say switch results, case success, model, case failure. We really don't care at the moment. So we're going to say break. We're going to spell let correctly. And once we get this model out, I guess we can say let genres is model.genres. Looking good. We want to get 5 random elements from this. So what I could do is we could say var seeds is a empty new set for strings. And we're going to say while seeds.count is less than 5, which makes sense, we are going to append a random genre. So we're going to say insert genres.random element. That's what we want to go ahead and do. And let's see, random element must be unwrapped. I guess random element gives us optional. So we're going to say if let random is this, we're going to try to append the random element. And this loop will only run until, unless we have 5 elements in the seeds set. So less than 5. I guess we want this to say less than or equal to 5. And once we have that, we can then say in here, API caller shared get recommendations, passing in our genres, which is, I guess, going to be our seeds, is what we called it. And this one, we're just going to ignore the response. And we hit Command B. I'm totally winging this at this point, and I hope it works. Let's see what we're doing in this get recommendations. We are printing out the JSON results. So let's go ahead and give this guy a run. We actually don't want to print this out anymore. And let's see. All right, so something happened. So we're saying invalid request. Why the heck is it invalid? It does not look invalid to me. I think API or Spotify's API might be broken. So let me go ahead and print out the URL here. So we're gonna print out the request.url.absolute string to make sure it is valid. Because what we are doing might be kind of wrong with the API URL. So let's print that out. So we're saying the API URL, recommendations, seed genres, drum and bass, metalcore, dub, page. I think we have 6 in here. Did I read that right? We got 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Yes, we have 6. So we need to decrease our for loop. Let me go back to home. And let's see, we want this to be, yes, less than 5. I was right in the beginning. I second guessed myself. Let's try that again. And boom, we have recommendations. Look at that. That's pretty cool, actually. And it looks like it's giving us a ton back. So we probably want to supply a limit as well. But this video has gotten obnoxiously long, so I'm going to cut it here. In the next video, we'll just do this last API response. And then in the one after that, we'll do the UI. So thanks so much for watching. If you stuck around this long to hear me go on and on, if you haven't liked the video already, make sure to do so. Let me know you guys found it valuable. Comment any questions for the YouTube algorithm, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, subscribe to the channel so we can grow it together. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.